the interesting things about the past couple of days is that people are trying to gaslight you into thinking the Game Awards was good, right? RGT85 is making his video. The fanboys are running wild. Astrobot won Game of the Year. Meanwhile, the sales haven't gone up at all. Nobody cares, okay? Nobody watched the Game Awards. Nobody cares what the journos say. If anything, people are pushing back against it. Right? More and more people are waking up to the fact every day that Jeff Keighley is a shill who willingly sucks PlayStation cock while taking it in the ass somehow at the same time. Okay? That's Jeff Keighley. He is the biggest PlayStation fucker on the planet. And you can't dispute this, right? When you look back at the history of the Game Awards, seeing how they hyped up No Man's Sky and gave their 2020 award to The Last of Us Part 2 over the far more iconic and legendary Animal Crossing New Horizons, it can't be more obvious that the Game Awards is a massive shill show for PlayStation and certain industry insiders, People like Neil Druckmann, people like Kojima, scum, okay, who haven't produced anything of value in 20 years or more or ever, right? Like, this is the reality in regards to the situation. But there is one interesting tidbit that came up from this year's Game Awards show, and that was the announcement of Okami 2. Like, Hideki Kamiya is back at Capcom, and he's bringing friends. They're gonna put together a sequel to the beloved cult classic Okami, and it's gonna be amazing. The original Okami was shit. Okay, this is something that people really need to understand about Okami. It really is absolutely 100% the worst game Hideki Kamiya has ever produced, right? This is something I've been saying for a long time and really needs to be understood by the masses. But the reason Okami was propped up by game journos the way it was purely as a method of pretending as if it was better than Zelda, right? It was no different than Dark Cloud or Final Fantasy VII. The idea was to downplay the far superior Nintendo IP by propping up some no-name thing that quickly faded away and became irrelevant. When you look at Okami, when you look at its legacy, when you look at what it does, right? What you see is a Zelda clone that does not live up to Zelda at all, right? When you really bring it down to brass tacks, the only thing that people love about Okami is the theme and the fact that it won a bunch of awards, right? When you take that away from it, it really is a mediocre Zelda clone. Something that fell far behind The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess and several older Zelda games, right? Like, Okami never even came close to what Eiji Aonuma and his team were producing around that same time, and especially not afterwards, right? Okami is something that was put on a pedestal to try and create the illusion that the PS2 had innovative, creative, artistic games, right? I would put it on the same vein of Caliper or something like Ico or things like that. Absolute garbage that people propped up because, it's so creative. Games can be art. That was the cope, right? That always has been the cope, and nothing that a sequel could do could possibly match up to The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, right? Nothing Okami 2 can accomplish is going to stand up to Nintendo's vast history of superior titles in the same genre, right? Okami 2 is just going to be a rehash of the original with no new, fresh, or interesting ideas that will probably not even come out, to be completely honest with you. I have a lot of skepticism going into this that Hideki Kamiya is going to be able to put together the resources to even finish the project. Because if you look at the history of this individual, over the past decade, what do you get? Right? You get Bayonetta 1, which was a nightmare dev cycle. It's a masterpiece of a game, right? Don't get me wrong, but the dev cycle for it was a nightmare. The Wonderful 101, which did not do well, even though it's one of the best games ever made. You have like Scalebound, which was canceled. You have Bayonetta 3, which was not well received. You have Project GG, right? Which was completely canceled. They haven't even confirmed it's been canceled, but considering this was a Kamiya project, yeah, right. Two cancellations in the past several years, right? That is crazy to think about. That this is the guy that people think is going to save Capcom, right? That Kamiya is going to come back after being heavily involved in Platinum Games, one of the biggest fall from graces in gaming history. That he's going to come back and that he's going to make Okami 2 great again, right? Never mind that we actually already got an Okami 2, Okami which nobody likes, but like, no, he's going to come back. He's going to make Okami 2, even though it's already been made, and it's going to be a masterpiece, and it's going to be a big deal, even though people are on Twitter, like, legit speculating that the art for it might be AI generated. It's like, come on, bro. Nobody's excited for this. Nobody. Outside of a few hardcore fanboys who desperately want to keep up the illusion that Okami was something special, like, there's no enthusiasm for this game at all. Like, absolutely none. This is going to be a really interesting fall from grace. Even if this game comes out, it's going to be a massive flop, just like the original. That's something you don't hear a lot of people talk about, actually, is that the original was a flop. But it gets re-released all the time. Yeah, and it never does well. It's not that well constructed of a game. It's not that popular. There are dozens of superior alternatives to it. Okami has absolutely nothing of value going for it. And you are going to see this as the game approaches its release date. It's going to be a really interesting thing to see this game fall apart, right? This attempt at like reviving Clover fall apart, but yeah, it's gonna be something. It's gonna be something. And what the most important thing about this, I think, is just acknowledging how washed up you have to be to show up at the Game Awards, right? That's your big play. We're gonna announce Okami 2 at the Game Awards. That in and of itself should tell you all you need, all that needs to be said, right? This is something that I would put up there with the Shenmue 3 Kickstarter, right? Where Yu Suzuki came up there and asked for money to make something that should have been made back in the 90s, right? Kamiya is doing the same thing with Okami 2, right? Baiting your nostalgia and promising that Clover is going to be back. Even though, by the looks of it, the people who are hyping this up aren't Clover fans, don't know anything about the company, just have some vague idea that Okami is a masterpiece, completely disregarding the reality of the situation and that, like, it was a game overhyped by critics. When you really look at this situation, when you look at what's happening at Capcom, there is absolutely 100% no way, no shot that this game will ever be good. And of course, that also extends to other Capcom games that they say they're bringing back, Onimusha chief among them. There is no possible way that these games will be any good.